March 29th is Vietnam Veterans Day. It is a day to commemorate the sacrifices of Vietnam veterans and their families. Most states celebrate Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day on March 29th or 30th of each year. On March 29th, 1973, the last combat troops were withdrawn from Vietnam and the last prisoners of war held in Vietnam arrived on American soil. The commemoration is part of a national effort to recognize the men and women who were denied a proper welcome upon returning home more than 45 years ago. 11 years of combat left their imprint on a generation. More than 58,000 laid down their lives in service to our nation. Now and forever, their names are etched on the black granite faces of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, a lasting tribute to those who bore conflict's greatest cost.
We're here today to talk about the outstanding service that our Vietnam veterans have made for our country. Everywhere I go, I am welcomed and thanked for all of the service that I have currently done for our country. With 6 deployments to Afghanistan and 1 to Iraq. Every time I come home, I was welcomed with open arms, and I cannot walk through an airport without being told, thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you have done for our country. And I appreciate that. But there is a group of veterans that did not receive the welcome that we did, and it really hurts me to my heart. And therefore, they are my favorite veterans of all time. And when I see those gentlemen in the airports, stores, and Walmart, I walk up to them and I let them know that they are my favorite veterans of all times because they did not receive the welcome that we did. So we got 2 of our own that are going to talk to you about their service during the Vietnam War. And I ask you all to simply go up and tell these guys thank you when you see them out in their attire that they have served as veterans of the Vietnam War. This is great for our I think, what do you want to call it, rehabilitation or healing process, because a lot of those guys were not diagnosed with some of the things that our guys are being diagnosed with. And after 11 years of war, 58,000 people that have given their lives for our country in Vietnam. I think we need to continue to go on with the healing process and thank these guys. So without further ado, I will stop bumping my gums, but I will tell you that they are my favorite. They deserve it, and you guys ensure that you go up to them and tell them thank you. Hey, God bless, and make sure that we have a great Veterans Vietnam Day. Thank you.
I'm here today with 2 of our district team members, Robert Eisenberg from our security office and Juan Gonzalez from resource management, both who served during the Vietnam War. Robert, what was life like for you prior to joining the military?
Well, I graduated high school in 1967, and of course, you know, that was when we were really drafting, so all my peer group were either getting drafted or they were going into the service. So basically, I was kind of waiting to get drafted. And what happened was, prior to my senior year, I had gone down and tried to get in the Naval Reserve. Luckily, right after I had taken my induction physical, they called me and I was able to get into the Naval Reserve. It was kind of waiting around for that second shoe to drop, to be honest with you.
Gotcha. And Juan, what was your life like prior to joining the military?
Well, I graduated from high school. My dad was in the Army. He was going to go to Germany. And instead of racing to go to school, I decided to go with him. Then I received this letter from Uncle Sam, and he made me a deal that I cannot refuse. And the next thing I know, I'm on my way to Vietnam.
What was it like when you were first there, when you arrived in Vietnam?
Well, being an Army brat, you know what to expect. You know, not entirely, but you know, more or less. It was just like, oh well, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It was afterwards you get into the depth of it. When you go in and you can see, that's when it really shocks you, you know. When you see your buddies getting killed next to you, you know, that's really shock, you know. That's the thing that I still cannot cope with it. You know, you come back and you say, I was sitting next to him, and he get blown out and nothing happened to you. Why?
What type of work, Juan, were you doing while you were there in Vietnam?
Well, basically, everybody in the Army is 11 Bravo. It's infantry. But I also was a radio operator, which is a I think it's a 663C. And they were always trying to kill me. Every time I turned around, they were trying to shoot at me all the time. You know, so, you know, I was airborne to begin with. But when the thing got going, got hard, you know what, you just drop your radio, right? You have an AR-15 and you went there and joined them. There's nothing else you could do.
Robert, you said you were in the Navy Reserve. Were you in the reserve long before you went to Vietnam, or what was the process for you?
Well, I joined in 67 and went to boot camp right away in late November of that year. And after I came out of boot camp, I had about 6 months. 6 months until my unit was going to be. We knew we were getting called up and mobilized. So I had 6 months to wait before I went to my first ship, and it was in late '68. I was mobilized and went to San Diego for a while, and then came back. But I didn't get another ship until 1970. I was called up for a 2-year mobilization at that time, and that's when I went to Vietnam for the first time. I was on a fleet oiler. It was USS Ponchatoula. I was a third-class gunner's mate for one of the anti-aircraft guns on the ship. We spent all our whole time in the Tonkin Gulf. And what I remember about that was for 11 months it was intense naval operations. We were working 14, 18 hours a day because at that time that ship was a jumbo oiler. We refueled carrier battle groups. So every third day we were going out and refueling the carriers and giving them avgas. We also doubled as an ammunition ship. We had hundreds of thousands of pounds of 500 and 250 pound bombs stacked on our decks. And that was our job, is to refuel the destroyers and the cruisers and the aircraft carrier. I did that for 2 deployments. And then when I came back, my dad died when I was in Vietnam on my second deployment. When I came back from his funeral, I went to an LKA, USS Tulare, LKA 112. I was a 50 cal gunner on a Mike 8 boat for the 3rd deployment. We deployed the Marines up and down from the DMZ all the way down to the Mekong Delta. And that was, my job was to stand behind a 50 cal as we took the Marines ashore and dropped them off and provide cover. It was a very intense operations, and it was really hard to stop because you know, you do combat operations on a ship, but the ship still has to operate at sea, so you don't have any off time. When you're not at your battle stations, then you're doing those jobs that maintains and makes the ship you know, operational at sea.
Appreciate both of you telling us some of your experiences in Vietnam. What was your personal experience once you were coming home from your deployments overseas?
Well, it was, you get into something you didn't expect it. Okay? When I got back, I landed at Oakland. And you see all these people protesting and spitting at you. Like, what's going on? You know, you say, what's going on? You know, there's a lot of things that went on. Like, for instance, news media will say this and say that, but they're not there. They actually did not see what really was happening over there. They were just anti-war. And that's why they were saying the bad things. Never saying anything the good things. They didn't say about how this guy picked up this kid and carrying 2-3 miles on his back just to get him to a hospital. That never happened. You never see that. But you can see what they say. Well, they burned down this village. They burned down a village, but why? Well, it's a simple reason. Because when you burn down the village, it's because there were Viet Congs, you know, in there. But you never see that. The news always was anti-war. And the people just here just believed that was going on. You know, now they're coming out to see, oh, yeah, it's really not as they say. But that was the worst part when you came back, that people just more or less against you. You wouldn't even want to wear your uniform outside because you were afraid what anybody would do or say. You know?
Robert, what was your experience like?
Well, I was on the gun line in 1973 when the peace accords were signed, and the captain came on the 1MC about 3 o'clock in the morning and said we were heading back to Okinawa. And about that day, the night before, we came under. We would get a lot of fast movers out there in the Tonkin Gulf, and they would be. We suspected they were torpedo boats, and they would make attack runs. And that night before, it was a pitch black night, and we had to open up with a 3-inch. I started shooting at these fast movers about a mile away. And you go from that, and then the next day, you know, the war's over, and you're heading back. I had a similar experience. It took me about 3 weeks to muster out, and I spent my time in San Francisco there, and we were told not to leave the base. And I can remember in those days you had to fly in uniform. And so I put my dress blues on, and I was dropped off at the airport, and I was dropped off in the middle of a protest. And it was not a pleasant experience. It was one poor sailor against about 500 angry people. And luckily, there was 2 San Francisco police officers. And in those days, they wore their decorations on their left shoulder, left breast pocket. And they were all World War II and Korean vets. If it weren't for them, I would probably have not made it through the crowd. And luckily, that was the only bad experience. I came back to Texas, and it was a whole different story here. All my uncles and cousins all served in the military, so I had a lot of family support, and I really didn't get that animosity. Even my friends that didn't serve, you know, we just didn't talk about what I did. You know, they just didn't have a context of what went on. But luckily, I can say I really appreciated having lived in Texas, because it was a whole different greeting when I got back here.
Once you came home and got back to Texas, did you immediately go into government service, or?
Oh no, I came back. My dad had died a year before, and I had went back for my 3rd combat cruise. And when I came back, I had to go to work. I had helped. I had a younger brother, so I luckily had the GI Bill, so I was going to college, but I had to work. And to be honest with you, I didn't really have a chance to sit back and take perspective of what I had done for the last 3 years, because there was, you know, I had to put food on the table, and so those sort of events kind of didn't really give me an opportunity to kind of reflect on what happened. It wasn't until years later when, you know, I actually went back in the service that I had a chance and met some fellow guys, and you know, just wasn't it. If it wasn't, I had some uncles that were combat vets in World War II in the Navy, so they were a great help. But mostly it was like I have to go back to work and help support my mom.
Juan, what was your story like once you came back to the States?
Well, I came back. I had a whole bunch of money that I had saved. I took a trip. I went up to Vancouver. Did there 30 days, and I run out of money, so I called my father and said, hey, I need to get back home. And he says, guess what? I said, what? The Army's hiring. So I went back to the Army, and I stayed, you know, and I retired. That's, you know, so, and it was a difference to a lot of the guys that came back and they got out, because when you're still in there with them, you know, you still have, you know, like you belong, you know. And I was raised in the Army, so I feel that was home for me. You know, so it was really, you know, it's not unexplainable how you felt when you were around people that did not understood what happened. What were you going through? That was the worst part. They don't understand. You know, they don't understand when you see somebody that dies next to you. You know, like and I always tell them, I tell the people at home. I says, I'm not afraid of death. I'm just afraid of the people. I'm just afraid of not dying. I said, I'm ready. Oh, I'm ready. I've seen it. I've seen death too much, so I'm not afraid of it. But basically, just people did not understand what you went through. And they either did not understand or just did not care. He was in the military. If he was in the military, it was a plus because you're going to have to deal. But the other guys that came back had to deal with it.
Robert and Juan, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to visit with us today. Is there anything that I haven't asked or anything that you'd like to add?
Well, just to be honest with you, well, just to kind of to pick up what Juan said, you know, you come back and a lot of people can sort of adjust into a different civilian life. I came back and I was back about 2 years, and I'm going to be honest, I was bored. When you have an operational tempo that you go almost 24 hours a day, after a while I decided I was going to go back in the Navy too. And at that time I had just gotten married, so it was a chance to have probably a steady paycheck. But after you get back in, you sort of fall back in with that same lifestyle. And I'll be honest with you, it was easier for me to go back into that lifestyle and be around people who had shared experiences. And it also gave me an opportunity after 34 years to do pretty well in the military.
Juan and Robert, really appreciate the service that you have done to our country and still serving with the United States Army Corps of Engineers today. Thanks for taking your time today to be with us.
Thank you.
Okay.
My dad was infantry in World War II, and he was General Stilwell in China burning India. So he walked through the jungles for 3 years. So when I was a senior in high school, he gave me one piece of advice. He says, join something you ride into battle, you don't walk. That's all he ever told me.
I remember my dad would tell me, when I told him I'm going to be in there, he says to me, he says, son, I'm going to give you an advice. I said, how is that? He said, first of all, you find the biggest guy you can find and hide behind him. And second, I said, they know atheists in the foxhole.
Yes. Yeah.
When you're on the line over there and they have church call, boy, that was filled.
They say that conflict and strife and adversity will bring you closer to Christ, and I always pray to be closer to Him.